I want to welcome Ashley. Ashley, you are ready to go. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Hold on. And yes, you were right. I was laughing at you.
That's very okay. I made you smile, so that's good. That's good.
All right, I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to jump right in. I'm very excited for the turnout because I'm really excited about this product. This is by far probably one of my favorite reading tools that I use in the classroom. Let me get my present mode going here. Okay, so welcome to Actively Think, Actively Read, then POW, Actively Learn. Our objectives today are to appreciate what Actively Learn is, understand and utilize Actively Learn during direct, explicit reading instruction, identify key features of Actively Learn, and experience the Actively Learn reading platform from the student and teacher perspective. But before we get started, right away, I want to ask 3 questions that you can go ahead and type in the chat pod, and you can answer all 3 at the same time. I would like to know what your current role is in adult education. Do you find it challenging to teach adult students how to deeply understand what they read? And are you currently using any online reading programs for direct instruction at this time? And I do know, because I recognize a couple of your names, and I've persuaded you to use this tool, so I know some of you are already using it. Okay, so we have curriculum developers, ESL directors, PD specialists. Everyone pretty much seems to agree that it is challenging. It can be tricky. Actively Learn, Newsela. Newsela is another good source, and No Online. Okay, we're going to go ahead. You can continue answering, but we're going to go ahead for the sake of time because we have a lot to cover. Okay, so we're going to start with what is Actively Learn. So Actively Learn is a digital reading platform that helps teachers activate, support, and reveal student thinking. This is actually referred to as ASR framework. It's a platform that supports students and teachers by providing reading for depth. It's also a digital tool that provides content across subjects with powerful, engaging instruction. This website was actually developed with the vision of creating the best digital reading platform for all students. Actively Learn activates thinking. The class assignments are available with interactive reading and videos for grades 3 through 12. So we can definitely utilize their information. So you notice that it's not just reading, it's also videos, and both are interactive. So if anybody ever uses like Edpuzzle or something like that, they have already made interactive videos embedded into their system. It has a catalog with thousands of lessons across subjects and genres that can be searched by grade level, topic, author, and or standards. And we are talking about the TEKS, not the adult ed. However, I think, Anne-Marie, you wanted to say something about that, or you have some input about the standards?
Yep. Thanks, Ashley. And I did want to kind of remind everybody, because I know Ashley and I talked about this, is that when we're talking about Actively Learn, we're talking about how to use this for direct, explicit instruction, not for distance learning, okay? Not as homework, not to send the student off to just read these articles by themselves. So I wanted to make that point because it takes away from what this is. And as far as the TEKS are the Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills for K through 12 standards. But when we developed the new Texas AEL content standards, the team that developed the standards did look at the TEKS. So what you're going to notice is that a lot of the standards that are in the Texas AEL content standards, this resource is going to help you address these standards. And these articles will touch on all the things that the standards do. Author's viewpoint, summarizing, drawing conclusions, recognizing bias, all those different things that are in our standards. So just because it is aligned to the TEKS does not mean that it is not an incredible resource for adult ed. Thanks, Ashley.
No problem. So this product allows you, so instead of just having a paper document, paper text, this allows you to embed questions, notes, and media anywhere in the text. So the students are forced to stop, think, reflect, and write. So it does not let them continue until they, it doesn't let them continue until they actually do this engagement. Students are able to annotate along the side of the text, so they can highlight words and then make notes. And this is very helpful for the teacher if you're doing it correctly, because you get an idea of when they're understanding, if they're not understanding, so it's really providing that formative assessment. So the student can actually make a note, I don't understand what this means, or something like that, and then at this point you can get involved. Students can share their notes and have discussions with their peers. Now, honestly, I have not really gotten into this yet, but I plan to. I do know that the students have liked each other's things and things like that before, but we haven't done the actual discussion yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at actively learn from the student's perspective. And I should already have it set up that it is in student view. So as a student, I have just logged in. Now keep in mind, I'm in my normal account, but if you click up here, you will see that I can exit student mode. So the cool thing is, as teachers, anybody who's ever used these kind of platforms, is it's kind of frustrating because you don't know what the student sees, so you have to create 2 accounts. Well, you don't have to do that with Actively Learn because it lets you go into student mode or go into just normal teacher mode, which is very handy when you are doing something all together as a class. So what you'll see here is these are the 3 classes I have set up, and the student also has this independent reading that I'll talk about a little bit more later. And the assignments will all be right here. Right now I've just got 1 assignment on here. I don't like to clutter it with too many assignments. So we're going to look at this as students. And what I'm going to encourage you to do is we go through some of the questions. I would like you to answer, put your answers in the chat pod, and I'll enter them on my side. Okay, so in this one, we're going to, this is an example of an assignment like you'll read with your students on Actively Learn. What you'll notice is right off the bat, I have an essential question. So this is what they want to be thinking about throughout the reading. So in this case, we are thinking about how is reading on Actively Learn, how is reading on Actively Learn different from reading on paper? But before I do that, I just kind of want to point out a couple things that students have options of. If you look here, they have text settings, which gives them an opportunity to decide how they want to read. So they can change the margin or the spacing if they want to. They can change the size of the font. They can change the font itself. And you will notice they have a dyslexic option. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. They can also, and I usually like them to do this anyway because I like it helps us keep track. They can turn the paragraph numbering on or off. I usually prefer that it's on. And the color, you can change the color as well because we all know people with learning disabilities tend to, they do better with color sometimes. And there's also a use dyslexic setting. We'll probably get into that more in one of our following sessions. So the first thing that you'll notice is we have a poll question. So everybody who reads this, and you can just say A or B in the chat pod, thinking in a deliberate, thorough way is A, easy for my students that love to solve complex problems and tackle challenging text, or B, difficult for my students. They prefer material that is simple and quick to master. So just go ahead and type in the chat pod, either A or B, and I think we're all agreeing that B is probably, unless you're really just super lucky, difficult for my students, but you'll notice I can't move from here until I answer this question. So I have to engage before I can just jump through the whole thing. And then what I'm able to see is how everybody answered. So 33% answered. Now that's a surprise, isn't it? I'll explain that later. But you'll see you're able to do a poll and get an idea real quick. We did one the other night. It was Halloween, and I had 5 students, which didn't really make me happy. But I only had 5 students, so we did the poll, do you believe in ghosts? Which it was funny at the beginning. Almost none of them did, but at the end they suddenly did. So we're just going to go through some of the features here. I'm not going to actually sit here and read to you because I don't want you to fall asleep. So students need more depth. We finally have tools to push the minds past the comfort zone. So some things that I'm able to do. Here I highlighted the text because maybe that's a word, because I can usually identify words that I think the students might be challenged with, and they can see more information over here on the side. But what you also notice is they can also hear it. It will read to them. Here I've got a word highlighted. It will define it for me, but also it will translate it. So if you have second language students, this is going to help them even more, especially if they just absolutely don't understand that word. From here, the vast majority of people happens like a reflex. It's fast and automatic. So we find that we have the tools to push the mind past its comfort zone so that students are actually having a rich, deep experience throughout the reading. Aside from this human tendency to avoid thinking, what are some obstacles to deep understanding that you've encountered in the classroom? So if you could put a couple ideas in the chat box, I will enter them in on this side. Okay, so lack of experience and confidence. Oh, good one. Concrete rather than abstract. Thinkers. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so that gives us a couple ideas, so I'm going to go ahead and submit my answers. Feel free to continue making your suggestions. Here you see that you're able to embed images as well. Here I have motivating students through collaboration and support. So before students can put in the hard work of deep level thinking, they need to see the purpose for it and believe that they can be successful. So over here, we can add visuals to kind of help support it. I find this to come in handy if we're reading something from a long time ago and perhaps they named something. Recently it was a type of car from like the 1920s, so I included a picture of it so the students have an idea of what it looks like. So you're able to add that media. You're able to add videos as well. And scaffolding and accessibility features to establish meaning in the text. I have an example I'm going to show later of where I guide them through the process of what they should be looking for as they're reading, and then I start putting them on their own towards the end. Can you give specific examples of how you could use scaffolding notes or embedded media to make a text you teach more manageable for students? If you could just enter some ideas in the chat box. And I'm going to say, oh, here, we've got some answers. Use a chart or an outline. Okay, good. I would say for reading strategies. And let's see, provide. Okay, yes. Explanations for vocabulary. Yes. Graphics. Provide elaboration or example, so something abstract is connected to something concrete. Good. Pre-reading activities. Yes, that's something else you can do. You can put pre-reading at the very beginning. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and submit that. Pictures for ELLs. Yeah, pictures are always, I think, are always valuable. And then you'll notice here that I can always, if I don't like my answer, I can always revise it, and then that comes to me as a teacher, and then I go ahead and let them revise it. I find that to be very useful, and I'll explain that more later. So you'll see that throughout the entire reading, you're able to interact, you're able to add media to it, and then while you're doing that, as they're answering the questions, you can't see it because I haven't graded anything yet, I can actually go in and see what they're answering as they're doing it, and then I can provide them feedback. And what tends to happen is it's done like on a rating system. So what tends to happen is if they don't get the highest one, they'll keep revising it until they do. So it's a good experience for them. And I just have two more questions. How might knowing what students found interesting or confusing inform the way you teach? Okay, it looks like somebody asked a question here.
Ashley, that was
Yes.
me, and we can wait. We can
Okay.
wait, but we can go back to that.
Okay. Well, we're about to come to that anyway, so that's fine. Let's see. Teaching opportunities. Yes, adjust lesson to meet their needs. So that's where we're doing that formative assessment. Keeps you focused on your instruction. All right, I'm just going to stop there and submit. And finally, thoughts about actively learned so far. So this is just from the student's perspective so far. Go ahead and share with me what you think in the chat box.
And Ashley, remember, I can watch the chat pod for you, okay?
Okay. I was just trying to find the type. Okay. Let's see. Gareth didn't know the text functions were available. Yeah, there's a lot of things. In this tool, I'm just going to make a side note. So whenever I find something new, I don't always just dive into it if it's complicated. And I did not find this to be very complicated. But as I got more into it, I was discovering more things. But I was able to use it right away, even though I didn't know every little feature. So you don't have to know every little feature. You can just start with the basics. Likes the translate feature. Can I put everyone in dyslexic mode before I sign? Yes, you can. It looks really interesting when you do it that way. Useful new tool for active instruction. Great resource. Okay, so in other words, we like it. Okay, good. Okay. All right, so I've completed my end. You'll notice that right now I've got there's 3 students who have completed. And I'm going to go ahead and get out of student mode. And now I am going to stop for a minute because now we're going to go ahead and take a moment to see questions so far. And I did answer Gareth's question. So what was your question, Anne-Marie?
I was going to ask you, when you are working with a piece of text, is there a way for the teacher to only let the student see one section versus the whole document? So
Yes.
we can work with just that piece of text so that they don't get overwhelmed, and if they're getting stuck or confused, can you ask questions or embed questions to make sure they understand before they go on?
Yes. Yes to all of that. The other thing that I really, really like that you can do that you can't do in other things that I've used is you can white out sections. So if you have something that you don't think needs to be on there, you can white it out so it's not on there at all. But yeah, you can stop it, and you can always add questions after you've already assigned it. So if you're like, uh-oh, this is too much, and then you decide later, you can do that. What you cannot do is you can't edit or delete a question if the students have already started the assignment, if that makes sense, which I just figured that out today because I tried to do it. Were there any other questions? Oh, wait, here. Gareth asked, I had another question that got missed. When I see a student's response, I can click Allow Revision. If I click that but they did not request revision, are the students notified? I believe so. There's a notification in the corner. I'm not 100%, but I will find out for sure. But I think that they do see that, because usually what I do is a bulk revision so that everybody is able to revise their answers. All right. Do we look like we're good from there, Anne-Marie?
I don't see any questions, but if they come in when we get to the next stopping point, I'll ask them. And Gareth, I'll watch for your questions. I'm sorry I missed your question earlier. Okay, we're good.
Okay. All right, let me get out of this chat box here. Okay, supporting and revealing thinking through active instruction. So now we're going to look more on the teacher side of it. Support thinking. Teachers can use annotations in media to provide more context and fill gaps in background knowledge. So this is really, really good, especially when we're doing historical things or things that they just have no idea or they're not familiar with. I like to blend it with social studies elements so that they can, yes, you can embed, sorry, I know I'm not supposed to answer those, but so Gareth just added if you can embed videos. You absolutely can. Teachers can use knowledge sets to provide sequenced content for students to build off what they have already read. So you may start with, like in this example, they're talking about the Japanese-American internment, and then they continue to use articles associated with that. So these sets have already been built. Support thinking, text settings, as I showed you, text-to-speech, built-in dictionary, and translate features make Actively Learn accessible for various learners. Reveal thinking, teachers can use student data, responses to make decisions on instruction and feedback to improve student performance. You are given, on the free version, you are given student data so you can see in how they've done overall. There is a gradebook section. And teachers are able to provide feedback that students receive in real time. Students revise their work to show improvement. Teachers are able to cultivate metacognition by having students check their responses against their peers and flag when they're having trouble. So what we're going to do now is we're going to view this from the teacher's perspective. And we'll look at content, classes, and real-time assessment. So right now, I'm in student mode, so I'm going to switch out, and I'm going to go back into teacher mode. Okay, so now here I am in teacher mode, and I just want you to kind of take a look at what you see on this page. Just kind of explore what you see, because this is going to be your first page. This is your home page, basically. And what you're going to see is I've got a notification here because somebody's asked me for a revision. These are my classes here. I tried to organize them somewhat. You've got, at the top, you've got content, professional learning, classes, and independent reading catalog. Across the top is your content. So that's what we're going to look at first. You're going to notice that you have a search option, but you also have a number of filters. So I can choose my reading level. If I have a standard in mind, I could, because the standards are fairly similar, but I could choose a standard. And then my workspace, what that is, these are the articles I've saved. These are for me. These are the ones that I'm considering or I have used. But what you're going to find, if you look at some of the titles of them, they're high. There's a lot of high interest articles. So one day, this was like the coolest thing for me too, because this never happens. But I asked my students, my lower reading students, I said, okay, which one do you want to read? Do you want to read, I think it was these two. Is it really okay to eat food that's fallen on the floor, or do you want to read, is double dipping a food safety problem or just a nasty habit? And they were all like, both. So I was like, yay, we want to read. That's a good thing. So they have these really, really good, interesting lessons. So these are just some of them that I have saved. But you'll see they've got news articles. Right now I've got the standard set. I'll do all reading. They've got ELA, but watch what happens when I click on this. There's so many options. So you've got genres, you've got themes, you've got different types. So you have all sorts of options. And then, of course, you have your science, social studies, and recent, and I believe from what I read, is they are about to start basically merging with bringing in some other tools for science type of thing. There's the, I don't know how to pronounce this company, but it's called PHET, and I know they do simulations and science simulations, and they're talking about embedding that type of thing into the system eventually as well. So that's really your catalog, your library. You'll notice that it tells you, because I'm just looking at them, it tells you the reading level, tells you the number of pages, which I find useful because sometimes I don't want to read a super long one. That doesn't usually go very well. And you can, if you want to add it to your workspace, you can click on the star. Or if you want to assign it to your class, you just click on that plus sign and you assign it to whichever class you want to assign it to. Yes.
Ashley, quick question. This page that we're looking at right now, where it says high interest articles, what tab at the top does that align with?
That is just my home page.
That is your home page.
So it's basically making recommendations. So
okay. Yeah, I think I wanted to clarify that because I was trying to figure out where. So these are just recommendations, and what is your home page when you log in? That's the first thing you see.
Yes.
Is that your My Workspace?
my workspace is here. You can see that we just did a couple Halloween things, but these are things I've either done or that I'm interested in doing. But you'll notice, this is a standard, by the way. I'm bringing it up because Janet knows my frustration with this lesson, but it was text sequence, but they had a video on it. They just happened to have the text sequence video on it, so I was able to use that. But yeah, this is my workspace. Where we were looking was just my normal home page. And on that home page, let me refresh here, is where, well, it took me back to my workspace. But normally when you first log in, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see the recommendations. And then just to continue, then on the left side, the professional learning, I'm not going to get that into, but it's basically giving you professional development. They walk you through some really good lessons for you yourself, and they're engaging lessons as well. From there, we have the classes. And these are the classes that I have created, but you'll notice that I can add a new class, and for those Google Classroom lovers like myself, you can simply import the classes from Google Classroom, or you can start a new class if you choose to do so. I'm not going to get into the how-to so much this time, probably do that more next time. But you can see that we've got the Tech and Tell, and then these are my other classes. And then the independent reading catalog, I have never really realized was there. And this is for students to go explore for themselves. And what it does is they're able to go out and do the reading, and then it allows them to, I believe they can do reviews or what they liked and don't like and that sort of a thing, or they can give it stars, and they can choose and pick what they might want to. So that might be a good extension activity, especially for those students who get done early. So if they're done and they're like, okay, I'm done, well, you could say, well, go to the independent reading catalog and go explore there. The one thing I do want to do, let me see, okay, I'm good on time, is I want to look at the same lesson that we just looked at, but this time I want to look at it from the teacher's perspective. Hold on, I'm struggling with the WebEx thing. Go away. So over here, you'll see the notes. When you click on it, that makes them go away, or if you want to see them, it brings it back up. I'm having problems with the WebEx thing is in my way. There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is, here are all the questions on this side. And this was our poll that we did. So what I'm going to look at now, so I've had 3 people who have actually officially answered. So we looked at our poll, and we look and we see specifically. So I'm on question 1 right here, and I can see all of my students. So I've got, on this one, I have 4 students. I have Ashley Rockstar, or no, Rockstar Ashley, sorry. Ashley, that's just me, and then William Winkle, whoever that guy is. So we've had 4 people answer. So Ashley Rockstar answered the question, thinking in a deliberate way, throwaway, is easy for my students. They love to solve complex problems and tackle challenging text. Ashley Winkle said, difficult for my students. They prefer material that is simple and quick to master. And William Winkle said, difficult for students. They prefer material that is simple and quick. He said the same thing. He's a copycat. So I see their answers here. I am able to show a grading rubric based on what the standards are. I've not used that much. I can bulk grade unanswered questions. So that would probably be mostly for the multiple choice base. On this one, I don't have anything to grade because it was a poll. But I can bulk allow revisions. So if I want my students all to be able to revise their answers, which I always do, I can do it that way. So now when I go to question 2, you'll see the question was, aside from this human tendency to avoid thinking, what are some obstacles to deep understanding that you've encountered? Well, Ashley Rockstar Ashley says, I don't. I'm such a good teacher. I have no issues, ever. So I'm going to say, I don't think so. But we'll give her basic. Ashley Winkle, lack of experience, confidence. Well, Ashley Winkle's awesome. And William Winkle is lazy, so I gave him 0. And Ashley didn't do anything, so it's incomplete. Question 3 was give examples of how you can scaffold. Ashley Rockstar, of course, says, what? Don't know what you're talking about. I don't scaffold, but I do upload. So she gets 0. And you can see from there how that goes. So you're able to also give feedback. Please revise your answer. And it will go directly to the student from there. And I believe, Gareth, that you asked about the notifications. The notifications, I think, show up right here for the student in that corner there, because that's where I get the notifications telling me if they ask for a revisal or if they have a note or a question on there. And cover that. So the other thing I want to be able to cover, because I did not mention this yet, but the one thing you're able to do that is extremely useful, I think, is you are also able to import your own content. So if you already have a PDF or a document, really, if you do a Google document is the best way to do it, you can import that document. So I'm going to give you a very HSE-specific example of what I did. I did this quite a while ago, but I took the extended response writing prompt, taxation and revenue, because we have such a struggle with that extended response and just the reading in itself. And I went ahead and I uploaded it as a Google document. So you'll see here that you can add a pre-reading question as well. So I provided this information, so this is at the top. What I was able to do is I was able to break that writing into sections so that I could, because they struggle so bad with every little section that I feel like they get lost when they're reading it. So in this one, which was taxation and revenue, the first thing I asked them is, what do you know about this text so far? What is the topic? What kind of text is it? Who is the author? Do you think this author is credible, and why? So before they could even move on, they had to answer this question. So I'm forcing them to create good habits. Look at what it is, what's the source, that sort of a thing. And then from there, I identified the words I know that they're going to struggle with, and then I put it in the notes. Here we did, based on the first paragraph, what is the author's argument? So they have a real difficult time identifying the argument. And then, of course, what evidence proves this is the author's position. After that, what we did, again, helping them understand the words. And then here is where I'm just starting to guide them through the process. This is letting them know this is a claim or argument, and then showing them, by highlighting it, I show them this is the evidence that supports the claim or argument. So right now, I'm showing them how to do it. And then as we continue, I start having them identify the claims and the arguments. And I found this to be the best method of going through the extended response writing prompt. Because, you know, we have such a struggle with that, because it's like first they have to read it and understand it and think deeply enough and, you know, critically think, and then they have to write as well. So we've got to get at least through the first half before we can even begin to address the second half. Okay, and I am going to stop there and see what questions or comments have come in.
Okay, Ashley, I'm going to jump in here and I'm going to go back. Okay, so Gareth asked, after you've imported a Google Classroom, does it keep up with roster changes, or would that require re-importing?
Okay, so I have a quick answer for that. So I know what you're thinking of, because I think you and I have talked about it. So when I have roster changes, new students, and that sort of a thing, what I do is you just have to refresh it. You just have to sync it again. That's like the big one. Let me go to a class. So let me do that one. I don't want to go to a real class. So on the roster, you just have to, where is it? Oh, this one's not merged with Google Classroom. That's not going to work. Let me do course one. So it will say, all you have to do is, sync, right there, it's right in front of me. Sync with Google Classroom, and then it'll work. Because actually Rebecca had that problem yesterday, so her timing was good on that. Because she couldn't, because the student wasn't there that day, so she had not been updated yet. So yeah, you just have to sync it. And it syncs really nicely. And and then it'll tell you which students are no longer there, and you just click an X, and you can just, they deleted right away. Were there any other questions?
Yep, and I had a question, and
Okay.
I asked, is there, when you're asking them questions, like when they're working with a document and they have to answer questions, does Actively Learn provide a writing rubric, or, because when you're telling them, when you're pushing the button, they're an expert or whatever. Is there, because I would want the students to be writing complete sentences before I said, yes, your answer is correct, but I would want them to practice, giving proper grammar,
Right.
punctuation, so that they're working on the extended response that they're going to need to do too. So that's my question.
So my answer is, I don't 100% know.
Okay.
I know that they have the rubric for the standards, and I had a feeling that was going to come up too. But I promise I will know for sure by the next session. But I think they have guidelines of a rubric, but as far as that goes, that is something that we could, of course, implement ourselves.
Exactly.
And make that part of it, and, and make that a requirement for our students. Because I agree with you, because they tend to want to text and not write.
Okay, thank you. And then Gareth had one other comment. And are there other, oh, goodness, okay, I missed, oh, goodness, okay, here we go. Robert, I'm sorry. Gareth, we'll go back to the question. Robert has a question. Does this require that each student has his or her own computer? Robert, I'm so happy you asked that question, and Ashley, please address that, because
Okay.
I know what I want the answer to be, but you go ahead.
Now the pressure's on. Okay. Okay, so in an ideal perfect world, that would be fantastic. And that's probably best. However, and I'm not sure if you're asking, does it have to be a computer versus a mobile device, but I'm just going to address both of them. So there's no reason you couldn't use a mobile device or any other device for Actively Learn, as long as you have internet. You have to have internet. That's a requirement. However, to answer your question, this could be a situation or an opportunity for working in pairs or even groups, which, of course, we always encourage that anyway. So if you're short on technology, then my recommendation is to group them up or have them, work in the stations. A lot of places do actual stations where you have that one group working on a different activity and then have that group working on the reading activity, and then they could, basically transfer from there. I hope that answered.
And Ashley, I wanted to touch on what we had talked about for using this. You could put them in groups, Robert. You could put them in groups, but then if you only have one presentation computer for the teacher, direct instruction.
Yes.
Through. We really need to touch on that part.
Yes, I missed that. I knew I was going to forget something. Okay, so this is let me just give you an example of how I like to do it and how I have done it. So what I like to do is have the students work independently and do it on their own first. And then I provide feedback and watch what they're doing as they're doing it. And then I like to go back, and you go back into student mode from your screen on the projector, and then we do the entire reading together. That way we can discuss the issues that they're having, especially with vocabulary, especially with not understanding, with inferring, that sort of a thing. And then together we answer the questions again, except we do it from student mode. But that does not mean that you have to do both, because there have been many times that I don't do both, and I just do it on the overhead, especially with my lower readers. So they don't have to have a computer at all. So if you don't have any computers, you always have that option as well.
Thank you. Let's see if that helped. Robert, did that answer your question? I'm hoping. But let's make sure. I want to go ahead and verify that answered your question. Yes, okay, good. Okay, Robert, thank you.
Good question, Janet. It looks like Janet also asked, is there a significant difference in ease of use when using Chromebooks versus desktop computers? No, there is no difference, because I used Chromebooks the other day, and in the past My staff knows anyway. I kind of lost my computer lab the last few weeks. But in the past, I always have a computer lab. I didn't have my computer lab last 2 weeks, so we used the Chromebooks. We were on the Chromebooks. There was no difference. The only difference is that the Chromebooks are smaller, and that would be the only thing. And did Gareth have another question?
I think a comment. Let's go ahead and
Oh.
read this. Okay, it says, so I made classrooms and actively learned that line up with my existing classes, but new students have to use the actively learn class codes to join them at present. Can I connect the Google Classroom to actively learn, or does importing a Google Classroom create a new class? And before we answer that, I just want to clarify everybody that actively learn can be used separate from a Google Classroom. So if you're not using Google Classroom, I don't want to be confused by that. So.
Well, and honestly, Gareth, I'm probably going to be in there in about an hour, so it'd probably be easier if I just explained it there, if that's okay, unless there's a bunch of people. Because I know you don't have to have a code if you are using Google Classroom, though. I can't answer that. So if you're just using Google Classroom, they do not need a code. Okay, I'll just explain it when I get there. Okay. Is there anything else that we missed?
I don't think so, but let's just check in with everybody.
Okay.
We've got 6 minutes, and I know that there's an awful lot of people on this webinar right now. We've got 22 people that are signed in.
Okay.
So I want to see if there's any other questions. And this is why we made this a 3-part webinar, because you're probably thinking, I want to know so much more. So are there questions and comments? Okay, I'll let you know. Ashley.
Okay.
I don't see any coming in, but I'll let you know.
All right. So where am I at? I have 5 minutes. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to look at some additional features of Actively Learn. So content across subjects. Actively Learn content can be used to address specific AEL content standards. The catalog, as you saw, contains the following types of text: news and articles, ELA, science, and social studies. Teachers can import 3 of their own texts a month. I forgot to mention that also. When you do the imports, you only get 3 a month that are for free. But honestly, when we only meet our students a couple times a week, I don't find that to be an issue, because I don't really want to import that much, because that's harder. And why reinvent the wheel when they have all these wonderful lessons already made? Student differentiation, assigned groups and individuals, add extra help on questions and notes, and share assignments with colleagues. So I do want to touch on that for a second. You can share assignments with colleagues if you are linked to the same organization, but there's a catch on that. You can only share 3, which I was trying to figure this out earlier, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't do it. It's because I've already used up my 3. So that's a kind of a downfall, but you can still say, hey, go look up this one if you want to share with somebody. Data integration, there's an automatic gradebook. As we've already discussed, Google Classroom integration, so the two play well together, and provides feedback in real time. And just a little bit more about Actively Learn, because it's such a very well thought out program that it's interesting, because it's really, really research based. So it was developed by Dr. Deep Stran, I don't know if I'm saying that right, and Jay Goyle in 2012, but the company was built on 15 plus years of work to improve the design, practice, and experience of education. The development of this product was based on studies based on these 4 principles, which included hiring teachers who know and love their subjects, use rich, engaging content over traditional textbooks, organize class time as a seminar discussion to explore subjects in greater depth, and treat students like junior colleagues to help create a better student experience where they would love being at school. So in other words, let's let them do their own exploration in their learning. And I have completed my section. I did see some questions come in. Anne-Marie, can you let me know?
Let me scroll. I think Gareth is just kind of commenting on, let's see here, on importing. And Gareth, I think I'm going to just have Ashley touch base with you, as she said, in an hour when she comes to see you.
I thought
And
Risa had a question.
yeah, Risa, I'm scrolling
Oh,
down.
there's a couple.
Hold on. I'm scrolling down. Risa says, does what you import then become part of their library?
It becomes a part of your library. So you import, it becomes your library. And the other thing about importing that's important to note is it will not be added to the entire Actively Learn library because they are very, very particular about what they can and cannot add. And that's for copyright issues. So, but it will be in your library, and then the students after that will have the assignment there for them to reference to.
Mm-hmm. And Standing Bear said that this is her first time using Actively Learn, and she thought it was a useful tool. And let's see here. Just comments about a good session. But before we close, Ashley, I wanted you to address and let everyone know, should they go ahead and start practicing with Actively Learn now, create an account so that they can come back next week, because we'll be back. We will not be back next week. The next, let's talk about that for a minute. So,
okay.
First of all, here's your homework. Okay. And then
I do have a homework option. So if you're new to Actively Learn, I would encourage you just to go to Actively Learn and sign up. As a teacher, they're going to ask you for school, and they might not have it because, we're adult education. We don't tend to be listed. But they will add it because Literacy Council of Tyler is on there now. And then click on the Inter-Student Reading Experience so that you can actually experience one on your own and complete the sample lesson. If you already have an account, which I know some of you do, I encourage you to sign in. And as soon as you sign in, I want you to switch to student mode and add this class code and complete the lesson. And we are at 12:30. Holy cow, made it. I was worried.
Okay, so I guess that answers the question about what you want us to do before the next session. And Ashley will be back on November 16th, everybody, for Tech and Tell, and registration will be available soon in the PD portal. And then I also want you to mark your calendars, and Ashley will put this in the chat pod for me. Mark your calendars for December 14th for part 3, which will be in the PD portal hopefully soon. Next week it will be ready to go. And Ashley and I will be co-presenting on Actively Learn, and I'm going to talk about why this reading resource is critical for students that struggle with learning disabilities, okay? And this resource for all struggling learners. And I want you to think about the students in your class right now that are not, making the completion gains, or they're struggling with passing the GED. They're just struggling in general. And thinking about how you can use this for those types of students that are really struggling. And, okay, I'm going to see if there's any other questions in the chat pod. And I don't see any other questions.
Thank you all for attending.
Mm-hmm. Ashley, thank you so much for a wonderful hour and your expertise. And I want to thank all 22 participants that are on this webinar. Wow, thank you so much. And how many of you will be back and are going to register for part 2 and part 3? I'm hoping all 22 of you will be back. Let me see a show of hands. We're going to be back. Okay, Rebecca, yes. Risa, Robert, this is what I want to see. Okay, come on, everybody, hands up. Maro, Luba, let's see. No pressure. All right, everybody. Ashley, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful, wonderful hour, and very excited about this resource. So please take the time in the next week or two before November 16th to practice. And I hope wherever you are today, it's a beautiful day. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank Ashley, and take care, everybody, and have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.